So I'm in Alley Pond Park and I'm walking to see what I can film, and I see not too far in the distance this lonely tree and with these huge leaves, and I'm thinking to myself, what the heck is this? And as I get closer, I realize it's a common Paw Paw. Let's get a closer look. So here's the common Paw Paw. This belongs to the Annonaceae, which is more or less a tropical family, not really a temperate family. But this guy is a native, and although not common in our area whatsoever. And you can always recognize it through these large leaves, almost like they have a drip tip, a pointy end, like a tropical species would have. Here it is. It's got alternate arrangement of the leaves. These leaves are big. My God, these leaves are big. And I wonder if there are any Paw Paw fruit. Let me look for that. Anyway, so there are no fruit that I can find. I shook the tree to see if anything fell out. It might be too late. This is already almost November. If there were any fruit, I'm sure something would have eaten it. Apparently it tastes like, well, I've heard that it tastes like a cross between pineapples and bananas, which makes sense. It's in the soursop family. And can be big fruit. I'm definitely gonna have to keep visiting this guy year after year. But anyway, this tree likes it wet, and not far off the path over there, in the springtime at least, there's some running water that passes by not too far from here, and I'm sure this whole area gets lots of water underground, not too deep underground, as it comes out of the ground just a few meters away from here when it rains too much. Alright, and let's take a look at this bud. Let's see, hold on. Look, this bud is very distinctive, almost like a feather structure. You see something like that with these large leaves that have that almost like a drip tip pointed end to it. It's Paw Paw. It's a really nice find for New York City. Even though it does occur all the way up to Canada, I think, but or at least Maine, but not that common around here. That's the Mena triloba. Yeah. And look at the bark. Very distinctive also. Okay. Uniform in color. With these little lenticels. And it seems to be spreading, although, it's hard to tell because I don't think it necessarily means that the fruit are spreading the species. It could just be underground runners that are doing the job from the roots. But hopefully it keeps spreading. This is a good addition to the flora. What's that guy doing here? That is not a native plant, and it's not invasive. But it's a cool plant. Let's take a closer look. This is Mena sequoia glyptostroboides. Note the opposite arrangement of the leaves. And it's from Asia. This has an interesting story because, if you were driving in New York City maybe 90 million years ago or so, you wouldn't be able to go very far without crashing into one of these. But then, I guess they became extirpated and found again in Asia. A story not unlike that of the ginkgo. And they've been reintroduced, brought over. It's closely related to the bald cypress and the redwoods. It has similar ecology. This is usually a flooded area. There's the base of the tree. This is usually a flooded area in the spring, at least through mid-summer. And I'm pretty sure somebody brought it over and planted it. But this guy, you know, like bald cypress and trees in that clade, it'll grow 5 feet a year given the right conditions. Maybe a little bit slower here because it's a little bit shaded, but you know what? I bet you it's been growing real fast. So they got to grow fast because their seeds are adapted to water dispersal. Whenever there's a flood event in their habitat, the seeds will get dispersed with running water, and wherever they land that's conducive to their growth, they have to germinate quickly and grow fast before the next flood. Otherwise, it'll risk the plant getting flooded beyond where it can reach oxygen. And bald cypress is has alternate arrangement of the leaves, and you can always tell it from the quote-unquote knees that come from the roots, which stick out of the ground several feet away from the plant. Alright, if I find a bald cypress anywhere near here, I'll talk about that one. So this is a nice one. This is Michella repens, and you call this particular patch of ground cover of Michella repens, the partridge berry, a clone, because it is a vine. It's a woody vine, but it's really small, but it spreads by asexual reproduction. So, you know, the vine spreads, maybe it separates a little bit from the original mother plant, and you get clones. Usually when you find Michella repens, you just see a couple of strands, something like this, running through the ground, but not a big mound. This is a real treat to see it like this. And let's see if I can find some berries, because there's something interesting to talk about with that. You know, these berries are edible, and they're edible to birds. There's one over here also. They're edible to birds and mammals, and you wonder why these things stick around all winter long. There's one berry. Let's see if I can find a big one. Thought I had seen one. Here we go. Okay, check this out. You see those two openings? That's where the flowers were. The flowers were above a fused double ovary. Basically two carpels with two flowers, two fused carpels with two separate flowers. And inside, you know, each carpel was capable of making 4 seeds. But inside, let's see, this one, just one seed. Yeah, here's another one. It's a pretty vine. It's a good ground cover if you can get it like this. It's got that greenish, whitish mid-vein with these small heart-shaped leaves. And what's interesting about the flowers, besides what I just told you, is that you have pin flowers and thrum flowers. Pin flowers and thrum flowers. And if you come back, I guess in June, you'll see the flowers. But the pin flowers have Okay, why do they have pin and thrum flowers? Because this species exhibits distyly. That is, it can have styles of different sizes. The pistils are of different sizes. One of them will have long anthers and short pistils, and another one will have short anthers and long pistils. And you guys can look this up, right? Distyly, pin and thrum flowers. This clone would all have, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong though, but I believe that being a clone, it would have all the same kinds of flowers, and it would require the presence of other types of flowers, the opposite flower, for it to get pollinated by the bumblebees, or just the bees. I'm not sure if it's bumblebees or just bees in general. Right. The flowers on the inside have a whole bunch of hairs to keep ants from taking the nectar, and just it's leaving it exclusively for the bees. All right. So usually this is what it looks like when you find it out in forests, but this is a nice mound. It only occurs in slopes like this one, you know, when with all the falling leaves, most of them don't stick because through gravity and wind and gravity will push them off the plant. So in a situation like this, you can get a big mound. So usually in a situation like this where you have the partridge berry growing on a slope, because it's kind of a sloped setting here, the leaves will fall off thanks to gravity and wind, and it'll expose the plant to sunlight during the winter and the summer. Not so much in the summer when the canopy's full of leaves, but definitely in the early spring, late winter. And I believe it can photosynthesize in the winter. Not too much though. Alright. And usually what you find is something like this. When you find it out in the forest, not in a clonal situation like this. It's a big mound. It's about 2 yards, 2 meters. Yeah, 2 meters across. So here in this, what would have been a vernal pond. Oh, this year it's almost a vernal pond. It's really dry. I haven't seen it this dry in a couple of years. You have an aquatic liverwort. There's the thallus. And this is Rixia. The liverwort Rixia. And a lot of people like to grow this in their aquariums. Let's see if I can get a close up of this. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Liverworts have a beauty of their own. They really do. When you get into the liverworts, it's another rabbit hole for the botany specialists or hobbyists to fall into. Look at the pattern on this guy. And you can find this plant. You can find this plant just growing as a floater. When this pond is full of water, it'll be floating at the surface. But now it's really taking advantage of the situation, and it's growing directly attached to substrate. It's got that dichotomous branching. Look at this guy. That's pretty. So what I've got here is the American Witch-Hazel, common Witch-Hazel, Hamamelis virginiana. Okay, look at that. You got asymmetrical leaves, in opposite arrangement. And what's cool and interesting about this, besides the fact that they do get the Witch-Hazel compounds that you see at the barber shops, what's interesting about this is possibly the last flower of the season. I mean, right now there's other things flowering, but not much though. But when you come back in November, late November, early December, possibly even late December to January, you could see some variations of this species in bloom. This is in the Hamamelidaceae, and here's the flower. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? You can see. Not all of it's in bloom. There's a whole bunch of buds still left to bloom. So when the leaves have fallen off, you might come across a blooming bush that has no leaves, and it has these yellow long petals. There. Look at those 4 sepals, 4 petals. The petals are elongated. Really interesting. But it's nice to see in the winter, to see something in bloom in the winter. And if you come back here a month from now, it'll probably be in full bloom. It's a common understory bush in our area. Common understory bush in our area. So you guys can go out and look for it on your own. Certainly you'll find it in botanical gardens. And they have variations in those places. Like NYBG, that'll bloom in January or February. So, depending on the variation, this could be the last or the first flower of the year. The calendar year. Okay, so there in the center you can see a 2-carpal gynoecium. That is, this flower has 2 carpels, more or less like 2 pistils, not quite. Anyway, and you have the anthers arranged at the corners or in the center of the sepals there. The elongated petals are distinctive for this family. Yeah, that's a nice shot there. So here we have a tree species that was ubiquitous in our eastern forests, in our neighborhoods, and now is gone. And I've seen pictures of primary growth chestnut trees that were gigantic, almost rivaling the redwoods, but not quite, of course, but just about bigger than anything else I've seen. And I guess this is a survivor, sort of. It's definitely infected by the disease, the fungus Cryphonectria parasitica. So, note the dentate leaves. This is Castanea dentata, American chestnut. And, it's not getting very tall. Right? It dies back. What happens is that the fungus will infect the tree and any open wound that it may have, and it'll get into underneath the bark and create oxalic acid, which kills, really damages the phloem. So in essence, it girdles the tree, kills the phloem, which thereby disconnects the ability of the tree to transport photosynthetic product from the leaves to the roots, and killing the tree. Now this one, I saw it last year, or maybe 2 years ago, and it was definitely worse than it is now. But the damage is done. Half. This is just xylem here, old wood, and the phloem is underneath. The phloem is underneath this stuff here. Okay, so what will happen is that the tree will die back and then resprout from the rootstock. And so fortunately it does have the ability to do that. However, it can only do that for so long before it runs out of energy and dies. So too bad. This was a really good tree. It was important for our industry. It was important for our agriculture. You know, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. People actually ate them. All right, and there's a little bit of good news. Right? There are some people out there who are genetically engineering this species to be 99.999% the original stock, original genetics of the American chestnut, not mixed with other chestnut trees. And they're working on inserting some genes that you can find in other plants that will metabolize the oxalic acid. I think it's called oxalidase. You can look it up, or maybe I'll put a tag to some information about that on the end of this video. But everybody should know how to recognize this tree. It was a really important tree to our ecosystem. And now it's basically functionally extinct.